Hello, and welcome to episode 36 of PoliticOly. It's December 6th, and my name is Stuart. I'm calling it episode 36, even though last week's was 37 because I skipped a number. But anyway, oops. Anyway, that's why it's 36 this week. So, my focus this week was going to be on third-party politics. Because I didn't end up getting to that last week, despite many things to talk about on the subject, right? So that's still going to be the focus later on in the episode. But today the breaking news here locally is that there was a shooting at a protest in Olympia yesterday. The quick summary is that a fascist, Trumpy type of guy shot an anti-fascist protester in the stomach. The shooter was initially not arrested until later, after he had even pointed his gun at other people. But the victim is okay and recovering from a thankfully shallow wound, so of course that's the important thing. And my best wishes for their recovery. And the shooter is in custody and facing a couple of charges. So we will talk about all that, what we know so far, and I will continue to share updates as we learn more, of course, since this is just breaking. I only just learned about it this morning, since I was busy yesterday doing other things, and not even aware that had happened until this morning. So yeah, of course, this is just the initial information that we have that I'll share with you, and then if you have any links or any comments or questions or anything else about the situation to help us continue to learn more, and anything you want me to share, feel free to comment a link below. And I'll also talk a little bit about what we should do now, and how to put this in context, so to speak. So as always, like and subscribe the video and the channel. I really appreciate it. This is, of course, I'm a small content creator. It's a small channel. I'm at 83 subs now, so thank you to everyone who's here and tuning in. I really appreciate you, and every click helps me out, and I appreciate it, so thank you. I do a weekly talk show talking about everything from local Olympia, Thurston County, Washington State, U.S., and global news and politics from a leftist perspective. I'm always looking for collaborators and ideas for what to share, so comment below or find my social media and email in the description of the video as well. So if you missed it, I had posted last week a couple of videos, the first two chapters of myself reading a historical, a book about local indigenous history titled Messages from Frank's Landing by Charles Wilkinson. So check that link below for those if you missed it, and stay tuned. I'll try to finish that story this week, and let me know what you think I should read in the future. I put out a question on Twitter to find out if folks liked me posting that on YouTube here in a video format, or if it would be simpler to just post it in pure audio on SoundCloud or something like that. So if you have an opinion on that, let me know below. And I've got a lot more stuff. I've got the book titled Anarchy, which is actually an anthology of Emma Goldman's newspaper back in the day, periodical, and I've got that I could read from. I've got some more local stuff, and things like that. So anyway, just an idea, and now on to this week's news. Which of course starts with the shooting from yesterday in Olympia. So what we know so far is this man, you see here on, this is the Thurston County Sheriff's page, public information about about folks that are being charged. And for Christopher Gwensler, who is the shooter from yesterday, what we know, essentially the quick summary, I'll start with that, is that Chris Gwensler participated in a sort of a pro-Trump, anti-mask, whatever their issue of the day is, right-wing rally down by the Olympia Capitol building on Capitol Way. And there were some altercations and some sort of bullying and different, threats and things like that throughout the day. A lot of these guys had bear mace that they were spraying people with, and pepper balls and things like that. But this man, Chris Gwensler, brought a loaded weapon, and during one of these scuffles, apparently discharged that weapon, and it ended up grazing someone in the stomach. Thankfully, the victim was not seriously injured, so grateful for that. Nevertheless, very dangerous situation and terrible crime here committed by Mr. Gwensler. So he is, as you can see, facing assault in the first degree and assault in the second degree. No bail posted as of the time I'm recording. So, I've got a couple of different sources to share with y'all to talk about what we know so far. And one of them is this excellent article put together. I've showed Mindy Chambers' work a couple of weeks ago in the Olympia Tribune here, writing about the homeless encampments and RV parking situations. But here's a piece she posted just today, compiling some of what we know about this shooting situation. So thanks to Mindy Chambers for the local reporting, and there's a link to this below so that you can support their work over at the Olympia Tribune. I will just quote here and read from the beginning of this article, which is titled, "Gunfire at MAGA Protest in Olympia Saturday, Local Pastor Assaulted." What began as a gathering of Trump supporters ended in chaos. One person shot and a local church pastor assaulted. United Church's pastor Tammy Later Stamfley was shoved to the ground during the altercation, much of which took place on church property. As she began preparing for church services Sunday morning, she explained what happened in a Facebook post. Yesterday I was knocked down in the church parking lot by a Trump supporter. This was after being screamed at for being a pastor of such a church. I had stopped with another member to use the bathroom. There had been a full-on brawl between Antifa and Trump supporters. People were beating each other, spraying chemicals in each other's eyes, yelling, screaming obscenities. I am so disheartened that this continues in our nation. I think every single one of us needs to do everything we can to bring peace. The way forward would involve careful and kind dialogue with people who see things differently, she wrote. At 11th Avenue and Capitol Way, United Churches is kitty corner from the state capitol, where supporters of Trump, who lost the recent presidential election, and failed Republican gubernatorial candidate Lauren Culp, have rallied repeatedly since late summer. On Saturday, their event was among those being held nationwide by groups that believe rampant election fraud led to Trump's defeat. Democrat Joe Biden won that election, although no credible evidence of fraud has materialized. 2020 has been a year of protests and counter-protests in Olympia. At the center have been Black Lives Matter organizers and their supporters, countered by members of militia groups, many of whom proudly display their weaponry. Skirmishes between the two factions have occurred, but nothing on the scale of Saturday's violence. And there's a photo here with a caption, "MAGA protesters square off with counter-protesters in Olympia Saturday afternoon." Law enforcement presence at BLM and Antifa demonstrations has been notable, at times involving the local SWAT team and the use of tear gas and flashbangs to disperse protesters. Members of the community have questioned why the militia members and Trump/cult supporters have been largely left alone. On Saturday, apparently, no law enforcement officers were on site during the brawl, which, besides the shooting, involved Trump supporters spraying bear mace at their opponents, according to eyewitnesses and video taken at the scene. The video, now removed by YouTube, also shows an individual using an American flag on a pole to beat another individual. The Tribune obtained a copy of a dispatch call at 2:34 p.m. as police followed the groups walking toward downtown after the assault on Pastor Stampley. It refers to one group as a patriot organization and those in it as patriots. It says, "If we get in a physical fight, we are going to intervene this time. This is not necessary. No further violence occurred Saturday afternoon." Olympia police arrested a 27-year-old on charges of first and second degree assault charges related to the shooting. A news release from the department identified him as part of a pro-Trump rally. He is being held without bail in the Thurston County Jail. No other arrests were made. The release stated that the melee involved up to 200 people with bats, bottles, rocks, chemical sprays, and guns. OPD called in extra staff and support from Thurston County Sheriff's Office. However, much of the fight took place before they had the numbers to safely intervene. It is unclear at press time how many officers responded. The news release also said no chemical munitions were used to disperse the groups. OPD is continuing its investigation. They are asking the individual who may have been hit by the gunshot to come forward so appropriate charges can be made. Anyone with information on the incident can contact OPD, and it lists the contact info there. So that's a pretty good summary there, and there's a couple of videos, but I'll let you watch the videos for yourself if you like, because it's not really terribly illuminating, really. It's just kind of a scuffle, and there's not really a terribly clear view of the shot, though it is pretty clear who made the shot, so there's no doubt about that. And well, we'll continue because there's some more local reporting here on Twitter with some different angles and things like that. So this is information from Twitter user at Baghdad Brian, once it loads, but they are not named Brian Conley. They're not in Olympia, but was reposting information posted by sent to them by others. So this one is just some photos of the shooter. This guy in the yellow hoodie carrying a flag around, and interesting, their hypocrisy knows no bounds, right? They carry the American flag and then beat people with it. Like how perfect of an analogy for the American empire is that, right? That's anyway. So they're self-parodies. Anyway, but I'm sharing this tweet thread in particular because they got a quote from the victim here, who, as far as folks know, as far as I'm aware, the victim is still anonymous and chose not to go to the authorities presumably under fear of reprisal. There's a long history, as we've talked about on the show, about local police working with these violent militia guys and so on, and not treating protesters what you might consider fairly legally, right? It's and so it might be reasonable for someone not to go to the police in such a situation, because the police might just make up some charges against them as well, or something like that. So and then it also gets their information out there for the MAGA chuds to do what they do, right, as brown shirt militia types. So I respect that, but there's a quote here from the victim. A scuffle started when the chuds rushed in and I was in the front. I got punched in the head and bear-maced. I have no clue what was going on besides that because it was so crazy at some point during that a gunshot went off. Then I went around kind of checking on other people who got attacked because I didn't realize what happened until like 10/15 minutes later I touched my shirt and it was all wet and had holes in it. And I was like, huh. Then I looked under my clothes and was like, WTF is this? And turns out I got shot. So thankfully, yeah, of course, it was just a grazing wound there, not an internal wound. So, and there's lots of other videos you can find on Twitter going around. This one is of later in the day. The individual who fired the shot continued to point his weapon at people after the incident, before he was arrested. It's not clear exactly how much time was between the shot and the arrest, but there appears to be, several videos after the shooting where that guy is still out there harassing people and threatening people. So, in my opinion, they could charge him with a lot more of those two charges, just based on what we see in these public, on Twitter and whatnot. But we'll see about that. So, and then they link to more information from Alyssa Azar, who is another person you should follow for some on-the-ground local reporting in the Pacific Northwest region. I've shared their work here on her work on the show previously for a different incident, I believe. But she was here witnessing this and posted some things about that as well, and was bear-maced as well, and gave a shout out to the street medics here, right, who are critically important. So, following the street medics and supporting those groups is very important, as you can see in a very practical sense here, right? Folks are using bear mace on people, which is of course illegal. It's considered a chemical weapon, right? Because it's bear mace. It's not even meant for people, even in self-defense, which of course it's not being used as in this case. And so and actually we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. I'm going to link about a study by Planned Parenthood that they're doing on the effects of some of these chemicals and reproductive health, so stay tuned for that. I also wanted to share this post from today by Mary Ellen Biggerstaff, who we've talked about previously as a socialist Washington State House candidate. But just today she posted that also last night another incident, someone pulled a gun on her daughter's African American boyfriend, who was just sitting in a car waiting for her, and the person said he was staring too long at him, so he and announced himself as a cop. But of course they don't know if it was a cop or if it was someone imitating a police officer, but some of this militia activity. So and of course, as I always say, it's hard to tell the difference in a lot of these cases, right? So and this is not the first incident like this we've heard of locally, as I've reported on previously in the show, in previous episodes. So just please be safe out there and watch out for each other. And I will post a link to more information or crowdfunding or anything like that I get going forward. So stay tuned and subscribe to the channel for more. And basically, so And then also, I will also say, if you know of community events, rallies, protests, fundraisers, anything like that, and go ahead and comment down below. And then you can also, if you have more to say, you're welcome to email me at politically@gmail.com. Or if you want to get on the show to talk about something or share your media or something like that, just let me know. So, in the short term, so what can we do, right? What should we do now? And in the short term, I think one thing that we're seeing here in the local community is folks are upset that the Olympia police don't respond to these militia folks, and they, respond disproportionately, right? They let them violate rights and make threats and be violent and all this, and they only step in when they, I guess are forced to for PR purposes or whatever, right? So this here is a post by Olympia showing up for racial justice from today, and it's not they're just copy and pasting this statement, but the statement is, quote, "Please pray or put out positive thoughts for our pastor of United Churches in downtown Olympia. The followers of 45 were trespassing on church property during their rally and asked them to leave. They shoved her so hard she fell and hit her head. The followers of 45 were also beating a counter-protester on the steps of the church. On the scanner, OPD is calling the followers of 45 patriots and are not responding to their violence. No surprise there. Maybe call city council and the police chief and tell them this is not acceptable. Oh wait, we warned them this was coming and their hands are tied and cannot help. Call them anyway and demand they do something. All options are open." So, and on a local level, right, we can contact our local elected leaders, and I've talked in the past about the different aspects of this, and I've posted in the link below a link to the Olympia City Council, so you can click that and comment. But basically, we have here a weak mayor system where the city councilors are low-paid part-time gigs, right, and don't actually have a huge amount of control over the police or the police chief. And the police chief really answers directly to the city manager, who is unelected. And though the city manager is theoretically appointed by the city council, in practice what we've seen is these sort of almost lifetime appointments of these city managers, right? Once they get in, and they're an institution unto themselves, unaccountable and unelected. And so I've talked about the need to push for a strong mayor system, and of course to push for strong mayor candidates, right? Leftists who will actually challenge the police department, which we just haven't seen, right? And we've got a little bit of leftist energy on the council, but it's not enough. It's not nearly enough to challenge the power of the city manager and the police chief and the police guild and so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely contact city council, let them know how you feel, let them know your thoughts, but then also remember these structural impediments to progress here in Olympia and what we need to focus on to get those changed, right? Maybe we could have an elected city manager or a strong mayor system, something like that, where there's more elected accountability, and of course that's short-term local focus there. And then at the county level, here, let me pull this next page up. So this is the County Board of Commissioners, and you can contact them as well for the same things like we were talking about with the city, right? And there we currently have a far right majority on the county board. And then, of course, as I've talked about, Carolina Mejia won the election this last month, and so coming up in January, there's going to be a new composition of the Board of County Commissioners. with a Democrat majority for the first time in a number of years, and Carolina Mejia, who had an interview on the show previously you can listen to and hear for yourself, but she's got a pretty strong platform on which to challenge the power of the sheriff's department, and has talked about reducing their budgets and making other actually significant policy proposals. So stay tuned to the County Board of Commissioners, and please make sure you support Time Inser and Carolina when they do any sort of accountability measures or try to make progress on this front, right? Time Inser has actually made a little bit of progress recently on some of these things by getting the sort of more centrist right-winger on the board to come along with some of the reform stuff. But these are really minor things that they've been able to accomplish so far, and we need to go way more radical, right? So yeah, stay tuned to the county board and sheriff's office, and we really need to get someone in the community to run for sheriff next time. Snazza cannot run unopposed, so keep that in mind as well, of course. So, and of course, ultimately what we need is a society that has adapted and evolved beyond fascism, imperialism, patriarchy, and so on. And so I could talk about any level of that from the bottom to the top, and I'll continue doing that on this show. Of course, it's all too much for one episode, so this is just a piece of it, right? So within that context. Starting at the local immediate level, like I talked about with the city and county level actions we can take, and supporting our comrades in the streets at the even more immediate level. And I will continue to share fundraisers for community organizers and activists as I have done, and share events and things. And as I always say, comment below if you have something you'd like to share on the show. But we also need to focus on our long-term projects, right? And movement projects is what I'm talking about, such as abolishing policing as we know it in our society. And we need to have the power as citizens to disband entire police departments which are unreformable. And we also need to address the right-wing violence in our communities. These MAGA chuds are only becoming more violent and dangerous as they continue to face no accountability for their actions. We have to support those in our community who are showing up to oppose the fascists in the streets at great personal risk. If you have more ideas about this you'd like to talk about, please let me know. But as I said, I support sharing fundraisers and things like that when they come up. So. But as for myself, I'm not going out to these type of events physically right now, just due to COVID, because of my concern about this massive spike right now in the pandemic. I'm trying to minimize my voluntary participation as a disease vector, right? So I'm not physically at a lot of these events right now. So if you are and you got something to say, please, by all means, chime in. And of course, we all need to continue educating ourselves on these topics and how they're all interrelated, so we can more effectively communicate all this to the rest of society. And I have a book recommendation up here in a little bit later along those lines as well, so stay tuned. Let's see. Let me pull up. So moving on to other news, I wanted to just go over a few quick stories that are important. And of course, as always, the articles are linked below in the description, so you can go and read the whole story for yourself. But we'll start with this article in OPB titled U.S. Judge Voids Permits for Columbia River Methanol Plant. And this was going to be in Kalama, Washington. And this is a big deal because this is going to be a massive methanol plant right on the Columbia River. It's an absolute disaster for environmental reasons, for native rights reasons, and for many other reasons. This would take fracked natural gas from Canada and convert it to methanol, which would be shipped to China. And just an extremely dangerous project that we just really didn't need here, and it's been up in the air, right, for years. And so this is a pretty significant blow to their efforts to build this giant refinery down on the Columbia. So actually, this is a good news story here. So celebrating that one for sure. And then along those lines, let's take a look at another one, sort of sister story here, which is, and this one I'm sharing an article from the Natural Resources Defense Council, but there's news on this all over as well. The Pebble mine permit was denied by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and Pebble mine is up in Alaska, and just beautiful wilderness area, and these corporations were trying to build this absolutely massive strip mine up there, and just like the previous project I had mentioned, just a disaster for environmental reasons and also for indigenous rights reasons as well. So this struck a blow to that effort to build that disaster. Another little piece of good news that we can celebrate. So last week I did a more significant update on some of the local, state, national, and global COVID-19 numbers and trends, and so take a look at last week's episode if you missed that. And I'm just going to really briefly take a look at where we're at right now, because basically what we've seen is we headed into, and I'll load up the epidemiologic curves, and this is on the Washington State Department of Health COVID data dashboard, which is linked below. But if you click on the epi curve here, you can see the trend, of course, first wave, second wave, third wave here. And we saw this massive spike here right in November before the Thanksgiving holiday. And then there's a lag here where we just haven't, we don't have the data yet because of that lag between the transmission and infection and the incubation period and symptoms and test results and reporting of test results, right? All of those add a day or two or more to the lag. And so we really haven't seen in the data what the result of so many people traveling over the Thanksgiving holiday and all the shopping and everything going on is going to have. But logically you would assume you're on this spike, you have this event that's presumably going to make it worse because there's so many connections and traveling and everything, which we know is what spreads it. And then what do? They project just this opposite, this downward spike. We're just going to plummet these cases, and this is all the theoretical, all the dotted line here. These are just the theoretical future projections. So I don't really personally understand how they can do that. I don't know what the data is that they are thinking that is going to happen. Don't get me wrong. Please let that be correct. But I have a bad feeling that in a couple of weeks we're going to be looking back and the graph is going to be looking quite a bit different than what it's projected as right now. So just stay focused. Remember, bear in mind the pandemic. Always stay safe, and If anything is optional, push it back, because this spike here is terrifying, and we all need to work together to do everything we can to mitigate the pandemic while we await the vaccine. Because of course, vaccines are going to take a long time to, first of all, be distributed and manufactured, and then also to work, right? You need 2 doses, and this is just a massive project. And so, it's good to have some optimism, and it is good they are having some success apparently in finding effective vaccines, and I certainly hope that those hold up in trials and move forward and all. But just don't get the wrong idea that is some kind of like miracle cure, because it's going to take a long time for those vaccines, even if they are that effective, to really help us get out of this. So kind of tying into what we talked about earlier about city politics, right? The city of Olympia has a vacant seat because Jessica Bateman was elected to the Washington State House of Representatives. And so they are going to appoint someone, and applications for that are open until this coming Friday, December 11th. So if you know anyone from the activist community, an organizer, a community leader, a working class labor organizer, a nonprofit leader, someone like this that has the real working class perspective of the people to bring to office that we need, encourage them to apply, and I will report going forward on who they end up selecting to fill this position. And then we will look forward, of course, to the upcoming city council elections in 2021. Let's see. So now I've got a couple of fundraisers I wanted to share links to. This one is organized, and I saw this one through La Resistencia Northwest. This is on behalf of Christopher Campbell to help him get a green card. So I'll just read the piece here. After being detained for 2 years, I was granted asylum and have been home a little over a year and can finally start the process for applying for my green card. It's a long and expensive process. I know it has been a difficult year. I hope I can count on you to help me make my dream come true. So if you can help out a local immigrant who needs the support of our community, of their community, check out that link. Here is one titled Reclaim and Rebuild Our Community that is just over halfway to their goal, and this one is not local exactly. This one is based down in El Sereno, California, and so I saw this one linked, I believe, by Tacoma Housing Now, which we talked about last week. So wanted to share this one because folks in California are going through a real hard time, and so community, mutual aid sort of organizations for the housing insecure are very important and effective right now. So if you can, that's a good one to chip into. And as mentioned earlier, I wanted to share with you a link to this study by Planned Parenthood on tear gas and reproductive health. So well, the description here reads, staff at Planned Parenthood North Central States and the University of Minnesota Twin Cities recently heard from many people who protested the killing of George Floyd and were tear gassed. These people then had surprising changes to their periods or bleeding cycles, like getting their period early or late. We're putting together a new research study to learn more about these topics, and they are asking for folks in the community who have been impacted by these chemical weapons to contact them and see about following up on that. So wanted to share that just in case that is you or someone you know, maybe who maybe you have a friend who talked about, you know, something like that, some kind of effect like that, and they may be interested in learning more about this study. So getting the word out there, and thanks to Planned Parenthood as always for their research and you know, efforts to benefit our communities. So this is a book recommendation I have for y'all. Mariame Kaba is an police abolitionist, organizer, and author, and I've shared their work before. Their Twitter handle is @PrisonCulture, and they've written in New York Times that piece about abolition a little while back, and more. So also by so check this out. This is brand new. It's not even out yet, but they're taking pre-orders, and I just saw this come across my feed, so I wanted to share this with everybody. It's called We Do This Till We Free Us: Abolitionist Organizing and Transforming Justice. So keep an eye out for that coming out shortly. All right. So, well, just one quick moment here. Get my window ready. All right. So, this is a segment on third-party politics in America at the end of 2020. Let's take stock of where we're at. We had an excellent Green and Socialist candidate for president at a time when we really needed a strong showing for the left, and we got tragically low Green turnout instead. Whether it was the Democrats kicking Greens off ballots in multiple states, the media blackout, or just really the situation with Trump, or something else, who knows? We're going to be studying that for years to come, right? So probably a bit of all that. But that said, there were some local wins for the Greens and many more DSA candidates across the country. The Justice Democrats, of course, did fairly well. I don't consider that a leftist group necessarily, but having some electoral success. And even more than that were the wins by leftist-approved initiatives and other ballot measures, right? We've heard that cannabis was actually the biggest winner of the 2020 elections in the USA, right? Because states across the country passed legalization and decriminalization bills. Every one that was on the ballot passed, right? And that may not be an issue that only appeals to leftists, but it is a leftist issue, right? Because we're addressing mass incarceration and so on. So let's just kind of take a look at some of that and then look forward, right, for the third parties in this country, and where do we go from here, and what should we do, right? We must also acknowledge the work of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So shout out to Gloria Loriva as well. I'm going to talk about some of those wins, and at least one known Green, though, has announced already a run, I believe, for 2022. But yeah, we'll take a look at that and any other candidates who announce or are preparing to announce, I'd love to talk about. So if you know anybody who's looking into running in 2021, 2022, or going forward, who is it, and let me know in the comments below. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can help and what you can do if you are someone like me interested in boosting the organizing and the power of third parties in the USA. So, first of all, let's start with Kenneth Mejia, who ran a previous Green campaign, I believe, for House, and didn't succeed, but was an exciting young candidate who stayed engaged in organizing and spreading the leftist message politically out of California. So this is a post on November 21st where he announced he has decided to run for city council in Los Angeles in 2022. So I've put a link below to the page where you can sign up to help volunteer for Kenneth if you're interested in doing so. But judging by his social media posts recently, seems really confident that this is a winnable race, and I'm a huge supporter of Greens running in city council and local elections. So and also getting started early, like figure out what you're going to do, announce, and go for it, right? Because it takes a long time to build a campaign and get some momentum. So props to Kenneth for jumping out right out ahead and hitting the ground running there. And as I mentioned, you can find a link below to the form that he posted, that he linked on the screen here. You can see to sign up to help. As I mentioned previously on the show, Emmanuel Estrada is one of the more successful Green candidates of the year, who is now Mayor-elect Emmanuel Estrada of Baldwin Park, California. So Mayor Estrada here only has 1,130 followers on Twitter. So come on, leftists, let's boost him up. So go find Emmanuel's social media pages and share them, and help celebrate the wins that we do get as leftists, right? So, and there were a few more. That's probably the most high-profile one of the year, but you can go to gp.org/2020_candidates for the full list of Green Party candidates across the country. And you hear all the time, sometimes, the criticism of, well, why doesn't the Green Party run local candidates, right? Why do they only run for president every 4 years and they don't do anything else? Well, that's nonsense. There was like 200 Green candidates, some winners, some losers, but a lot of people doing a lot of organizing and a lot of work to push this country in a left direction politically. So thanks to all of the 2020 candidates, and I look forward to sharing, as I mentioned, any candidates who announce this year. So recently, after losing the presidential election, Green Party presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker have been doing this video series called Toward a Strong Green Party, and there are 3 hour-long episodes to this. So if you are interested in helping, grow the Green Party and building on the successes that they've already had in the ballot access lessons and wins that they've been able to put in the books here already with the work that's been done by Howie and Angela and others, take a look at those videos there for more on that. As far as local candidates in our area, I know that CJ Sellers, who I interviewed on the video on this channel previously, because they were Washington State volunteer coordinator for Howie and Angela, but they have announced a run for a county level position in a somewhat rural area up north of here. So I'll report more on that. And go CJ, and anybody else who wants to run a leftist campaign in Washington, let me know and I'll boost you. So we've heard from social media that Lene Reed, who is a local poet and organizer, and organized the local Witches March and has done a lot of other community things here, may run for city council as a Green here in Olympia. So I'll let you know if that is announced. And anyone else who out there who wants to run for local office, let me know, and I will let everyone else know as I can, right? So so I guess that's sort of a recap of where the Green Party's at right now, and it sort of remains to be seen what happens next, right? So if you want to, if you're disillusioned with the Democratic Party and you don't think reforming it is possible because it's structured to be, capitalist and corrupt at its core, and you're just going to get sabotaged, as we've seen these past couple elections, and you want to go third party and you're wondering which party, where do I go? The argument for the Green Party is, as I said, they have done a lot of fights already for ballot access, and they have run a lot of local campaigns already, and there are, they may not be getting huge percentages of these presidential votes and things like that, but don't discount the work and the successes that Greens have accomplished. It is a lot of work, a lot of time and hours and volunteers to gather those signatures and everything to make that happen. So it does mean something that they have real experience in a practical sense in getting on ballots and winning some local elections. So I would say that's the biggest argument for the Green Party right now. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, I encourage you to do so. As I acknowledged before, the Party for Socialism and Liberation has done really good work as well, and I've shared some of their videos and things in the past. Really appreciate Eugene Puryear and other PSL organizers. So, but they're not getting the kind of numbers that we would need to really be gaining momentum there, unfortunately. So that is seems to be like more of an activist project, I think, at this point than something like the Green Party. And the main question right now in third party politics in America is really this: is the People's Party for real? I've talked about this in previous episodes, and I'll stay on the beat going forward. So let's check in with the People's Party and see what they're working on. They, let's see, you can go to their webpage here, peoplesparty.org, click on news, and you can see some of the recent stuff. So let's start with this. They put out some polls on what the People's Party should be called. Previously, it wasn't officially the People's Party yet. It was Movement for a People's Party, right? And so they wanted some participation here in what folks wanted the name to be. But it turns out the overwhelming winner of that poll was People's Party. Y en español, el Partido del Pueblo. So that was the winner, and that's what it's going to be, and that's what I wanted too, because I just think People's Party is really simple and straightforward, and people can understand really quickly and easily sort of where you're at, what that's about. It's not for the corporations, it's not for the oligarchs, it's for the people. It's a People's Party. So anyway, there's that. And then the next piece of news here is Maine becomes the first state to officially register the People's Party. So congratulations to People's Party organizers in Maine. and they are going to be collecting signatures to get on the ballot for the 2022 midterms. And the reason why this is the first state, it explains, is because of the deadline, right? In Maine, the deadline was so early. They had to get registered ASAP. So they did that, and yeah, we'll see where that goes. They will need to register 5,000 members to the People's Party over the next year to get ballot access in Maine, and the rules for different states are different. So it's going to be a different struggle in each state. So if you're interested in growing the People's Party and adding to that momentum, then one of the things that you can do is figure out what your regional or local hub or chapter of the People's Party is going to be. And if they don't have one yet, you could volunteer. And if you do have one, you can volunteer, right? So they have regional coordinators they're starting to put in there and get organizing, and local hubs and things like that. So this is all in the works. So if you have criticisms of the People's Party, as I do, as many, this is a process, right? And if you want the People's Party to be as leftist as possible, and any other input that you may want to have on which direction this goes and whether it's successful or not, now is a great time to get involved in that. So so go to peoplesparty.org and volunteer and try to get connected to one of your regional hubs. So stay tuned to this channel for continued discussion of all this and more, and I would love to hear your opinions and questions in the comments. What do you think? Is the People's Party going to make a legitimate run at major party status? They've filed in their first state, and they've got over 100,000 members already signed up, and let's see. Let's figure that out. Is it too focused on certain personalities like Nick Brana or Jimmy Dore, or is that just sort of a matter of how early in the process it is, right? And they're just trying to get the name out there, and that's not going to be a big problem. We'll see. Are you involved in any third-party organizing yourself, or do you want to be? And if so, which one? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to say more, you're welcome to email PoliticOly@gmail.com, or you can ask and we can record a video. I've had Green Party folks on the channel before, and if you are a People's Party organizer, I'd love to have you on the show as well, or any other leftist group or organization or community organization, or anything like that. So I think that just about wraps it up for this week. As I mentioned before, I did these Messages from Frank's Landings readings last week, and you can learn some local history. It talks about the Nisqually fishing wars and some of the history there, from the 40s, 50s, and the big clashes in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of local history there that if you've maybe only just heard a little bit about. Why was Marlon Brando in Nisqually, right? If you don't know, check it out, and that's really important local history. So I've read the first 2 chapters, and I'll try to read more this week, or coming up fairly soon. It talks more about the legal case there, the Bolt decision, and what went into leading up to that, and then going after that, and the implementation, and Billy Frank Jr. later in life and such. So stay tuned for more on that, and just really appreciate all y'all tuning in, and hope you have a good day and stay safe. Love, peace, and solidarity.